All right, today we're diving into a wild story. We're going to break down how one of the most common everyday painkillers on the planet ended up right in the middle of a presidential firestorm. This is the story of Tylenol on trial. Just 2 words from the President of the United States. Don't take it. That's all it took to set off an absolute firestorm, sending shockwaves through the entire medical community and right into the boardroom of a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
So, how do we get here? How does something you probably have in your medicine cabinet right now spark this level of controversy? To really get it, we need to rewind and go back to the press conference that changed everything. Okay, so let's set the scene. It was Monday when President Trump, with his health secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. right there beside him, stepped up to the podium and held what can only be described as an explosive press conference.
And here is where you really see the clash, right? On one side, you have the president's message. It was blunt, it was direct. He told expecting mothers to just tough it out, saying simply, taking Tylenol is not good. But then you look at the official guidance from his own administration, and it's a lot more complicated. It acknowledges some studies, but makes it clear a direct cause and effect relationship just hasn't been proven.
But here's the kicker, and this is what makes this story so fascinating. This whole public showdown over Tylenol, it was never actually the original plan. Inside the Department of Health and Human Services, they were heading in a completely different direction.
You see, the administration's first idea was to talk about a potential therapy, something that could actually help alleviate autism symptoms. But then, behind closed doors, there was this dramatic pivot. The strategy completely flipped. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about a possible treatment anymore. It was about a potential cause, acetaminophen.
So what caused the U-turn? It all seems to come down to one meeting. Secretary Kennedy sat down with Kenvue, the company that makes Tylenol, and apparently he walked away completely unimpressed with their safety data. He felt he had a, quote, moral duty to warn the public and to do it fast. And when he pitched this new, much more aggressive plan to President Trump, the president was reportedly thrilled. And that presidential announcement, well, it was like a lightning strike for Kenvue. It triggered an immediate, full-blown corporate crisis, and it put their brand-new CEO squarely in the hot seat. So let's talk about the man at the center of this storm, CEO Kirk Perry. I mean, talk about being thrown into the deep end. The guy had been on the job for just 70 days. 70. He came out of what he himself called the shortest retirement ever for this role. And you want to know how he found out his company was in the middle of this firestorm? He got a text message from Secretary Kennedy, and all it had was a link to a Substack post about Tylenol and autism. That's it.
Now, this isn't the first major crisis Tylenol has ever faced. Many people still remember the cyanide poisonings back in 1982. But this is a totally different kind of threat. Back then, the company was fighting an invisible criminal, an outside attacker. In 2025, they're fighting a direct warning from the President of the United States.
And the financial fallout? It was brutal, and it was immediate. Kenvue stock just plummeted, crashing to an all-time low. We're talking billions of dollars in company value just gone. And that drop sent a very clear signal to Wall Street. A whole new wave of lawsuits is probably coming.
Okay, so with all of this political drama swirling, you have to be wondering, what does the actual science say about all this? And honestly, this is where the story gets incredibly murky, because the evidence is just all over the place. I mean, just look at this. You have a Johns Hopkins study from 2020 that found a potential link, okay? Then you have a Harvard analysis that found an association in a lot of studies, but they were careful to say, hey, this doesn't prove it's the cause. And then you have this absolutely massive study from Sweden looking at 2.4 million children that found no association at all. So if you're an expecting parent trying to figure this out, what are you supposed to think? And it's not just scientists who've been digging into this. The legal system has already had a crack at it. In fact, just last year, a federal judge took a hard look at all this conflicting science and ended up throwing out over 500 lawsuits. The ruling basically said the expert testimony trying to prove a direct link just wasn't strong enough. But, and this is a big but, that ruling is being appealed, so that legal fight is far from over.
So, the president's warning is out there. The science is a mess. What happens next? Well, the battle for public opinion, and it ignited online almost instantly. Almost immediately, critics dug up this old tweet from Tylenol's official account, all the way back from 2017. Now, the company tried to jump in and clarify, saying, it was part of a longer conversation and their full guidance is always for pregnant women to consult the doctor. But in the social media arena, that damage was already done.
Yeah, that clarification hardly mattered, because the administration itself, through the official social media accounts for Health and Human Services, blasted out that old tweet with a simple, devastating caption, "No caption needed." They basically used the company's own words against them as a weapon. And the consequences of all this were immediate and chaotic. First, you had widespread medical confusion. Major medical groups had to rush out and remind people that untreated fevers during pregnancy carry their own serious risks. Then you had the corporate response. A furious Kenvue canceled all its follow-up meetings with the administration. And third, the beginning of a brand new legal storm as the company now has to brace for an inevitable wave of new lawsuits. This whole affair really forces us to ask a fundamental question, one that sits right at the intersection of politics, science, and our trust in public health. When the science itself isn't crystal clear, where do you draw the line between a necessary warning and dangerous overreach? It's a question that, for now, has no easy answer.